So I'm a consultant with Value Added in Africa, which is an Irish and UK charity that helps to build sustainable channels into EU markets for African-made finished products. So our idea, as Keith so wonderfully put it, is to move from an aid-based model to a trade-based relationship with sub-Saharan Africa. So a lot of our work involves branding and marketing of products to get them ready for sales. And an integral part of this is our packaging design program, whereby we match African producers with Irish and UK designers who help them rebrand their packaging to be competitive in export markets. So our program is comprised of about 6 stages, and this template might be helpful for you all who are interested in engaging the packaging design program, so you might want to, take notes or pay attention. So stage 1 is the selecting of the African SME and the selecting of a professional designer, the matching of the two, and the discussions between the 3 parties, development of a memorandum of understanding and a timeline. Stage 2, which I think is just the most important stage, is the development of the brief and the discussion of the brief, because the brief will give the designer all of the elements that she needs to proceed with the design process. After the brief is developed, the designer then conducts market research, looks at the products on the shelves, sees what the competition is, and then devises multiple design concepts. We ask for 3, but our wonderful designers usually provide 4 or 5. Stage 3 then is Value Add in Africa's work, is market research. So I take care of this, and I run focus groups, surveys through SurveyMonkey, different ways of gaining, of understanding consumer attitudes towards the concepts. We then pitch the research, we then analyze the research and present it to the client, who makes the final decision as to what concept they want to proceed with. So after they choose their concept, we then go to stage 4, which is the copy. So we enlist a professional copywriter who helps with the brand language and the copy text on the packaging. Stage 5, after the copy is completed and the concept is chosen, is the design stage. So the designer completes the design and artworks the approved concepts and applying them to all the SKUs. So then we go to the last stage, which is production. The producer prints samples with a local printer in Africa. They send the samples to us for approval, and this usually involves like back and forth quite a couple of times to get it to reach our satisfaction. And then the producer is free to sell and market their products going forward. And this can take like between 4 months to a year and a half, this program. It depends on the timeline. So we've been quite successful in our rebranding. At the top you can see Miro Herbs pasta sauce, which was rebranded by Zeus Creative. And at the bottom you can see Nature Rub Herbal Balm from Kenya, which was rebranded by Dynamo. So wonderful rebrands. But today we're talking about honey. And Katu Honey, which is the producer group that we're going to be talking about, is a Ugandan charity. They were founded in 2006. Katu Honey means let's get started, and their tagline is transforming lives in Uganda. So what they do is provide community-based social services for vulnerable cohorts in Kampala and also in cities around Kampala. And they're very child-focused, as you can see from the lovely children on the right. So a big part of Katu Honey's work is social entrepreneurship projects with their beneficiaries. So creating self-sustaining ways of income generation for groups that wouldn't ordinarily have a way to earn income. So they produce various products, including soaps, peanut butter, crafts, jewelry, as well as Katu branded mugs. And this quote for me kind of sums up the ethos of Katu Honey. We believe that poverty is not just about money. Our work on the ground has proved that what keeps poor people from realizing their full potential is lack of choice and opportunity. They seek dignity instead of dependency. So you can see here, this is how their products have mainly been sold thus far in local markets around Uganda. So small scale, local markets, trade shows, etc. Sip of water. So Katu Honey decided that they wanted to kind of expand on this model. So they submitted a proposal to the Project Inspire Award, which is a joint initiative between UN Singapore Women and MasterCard. And their proposal was entitled Establishing Sustainable Beekeeping Projects for Young Women with Disabilities. So their idea was, the award was $10,000, and they would use this to provide jobs for 100 women in Luero and Masaka, which are regions around Kampala, to provide them with income generating opportunities through beekeeping. So processing, marketing, and selling honey products. So why honey? They chose honey for a number of different reasons. Firstly, the environment in Uganda is very conducive for honey production. It's equatorial, rich, verdant, with diverse pollen sources, so produces some really great high quality honey, which is actually known for its smoky Ugandan flavor. As well, honey production is quite accessible for the poor because there aren't, the startup costs are quite low, and they can create their hives using local materials. As well, honey is quite, the profit margins can be quite high because it's a premium, it can be sold as a premium product, and also there's quite high demand locally and regionally in Uganda and Africa for honey. As well, honey production is promoting of diversity and inclusion because it's accessible to all types of people, including those with disabilities. And as well, honey is one of the most virtuous food products because of its role, because of its sustainability, and also its role in food production and the pollination circle. So actually, fun fact, 1/3 of food production is actually reliant on the pollinating role of bees. I just didn't know that. Katu Honey enlisted Green and White Enterprises, which are food honey distributors in Uganda, to train and set up a sterile honey processing unit in the Katu Honey, it's a hard word to say, offices, to help them learn how to finally extract the honey and then to process it minimally through filtering and pressing. So they create the most nutrient-rich, residue-free honey that's in demand. So operations and sales commenced September, or operations commenced, and this is their honey processing unit in the offices. And the first batch was packaged on September 30th, 2013. And they started selling it in markets and in the Katu Honey shop. And through feedback, this led to a desire for a new design. So that's when Katu Honey partnered with Value Added in Africa and commenced the packaging design program. So we got Laura on board, and we started in November 2013 with a deadline of March 2014. So quite a tight deadline there. So we developed an MOU, which lays out the responsibilities and duties of each party, and a timeline as well, with milestones and deadlines. And like I said, the most important thing is the brief, which contains all the substance that the designer needs to proceed with the design. So this is just bits of information from the brief so you have an idea of what's contained in the brief. For instance, we asked Katu who their target audience was, and they said we aim to attract the consumer who appreciates quality and is mindful enough about their health to want to consume an organic product. So from this we knew that we needed to target the conscientious consumer. Secondly, we asked them about their values. What do you want people to associate with your company? They said every drop of this honey was produced and packed by people with disabilities in Uganda. So we knew that their social benefits story would be an integral part of the branding. We also asked them who their main competitors were and what they were doing right. And they said, Be Natural Uganda. They have very unique packaging styles to match the pocket and please the eye. So again, we knew that the product needed to really shine on the shelf. So from the brief, Laura and I delineated 4 main branding concepts. One is the provenance, the African nature of the honey. Number 2 is the socially beneficial story, the aspirational quality of the project. 4, that it's very female-centered. Katu Honey is run by women, and most of the people, the beneficiaries, are actually women. And of course, with the women with disabilities involved in the project. And fourthly, that the product is raw, it's 100% natural, produced on land that hasn't been polluted, no pesticides, etc. So organic, really high quality product. And we found through the brief that there were going to be many challenges. First and foremost, that the branding must appeal to local, regional, and international markets. So I'll turn this over to Laura to discuss how we dealt with that challenge and many others.
Thanks, Kristina. Good morning, everyone. Keith, you might let me know if I'm running over on your schedule. So, just to give you a little bit about me in a nutshell, I'm an independent designer. I've been working in Dublin for 10 years. I've worked with brands such as Cadbury's, Dunnes Stores and Unilever, but I suppose my passion is really working with brands like Katu Honey and independent food producers. So Kristina sort of brought you through the prelude, if you like, to the brand, but what I'm going to talk about now is the creative process. So when Katu Honey came to me, it was October last year, and they had a brand on the market for a year, but it wasn't really hitting the mark for them. So as you can see here, this is the original brand at the top, and the reaction to the original brand. So more seriously, I'll go into a bit more detail as to why it wasn't really working for the consumer or the client. So this is the logo that was created, I believe, in the UK for Katu Honey, and it just wasn't really visually engaging for consumers. It didn't capitalise on the brand story, which is just such a fantastic story and so unique to the product. As a result of that, it had low shelf standout and subsequently low sales. And the illustration style as well, it jarred with the audience, so it's being sold locally, and obviously swarming insects when there's, perhaps high incidences of malaria isn't a very good association. So you have to be careful how you represent insects on pack. It can be kind of a sensitive area. And also the name Katu, it's actually, I have it on my hand here, believe it or not. Tutandike, we struggle with the pronunciation of it. I think we all pronounce it slightly differently at this stage. But this wasn't going to work in European market. Perhaps in regional markets they get their tongue around it, but certainly not in the European market. So the naming was the first port of call. So there's great opportunities with that, though. The social enterprise story, what a fantastic story. This is obviously a low budget project, so we really needed to capitalise on the story. And this is what we had, which we felt was, really unique to the product. So honey in itself is a great product. It's got multiple benefits. It's one of the oldest natural sweeteners on the earth, so it's been around since 2400 BC. Great product. I personally love honey. I have it nearly every day, so I was only too delighted to take this on as a product. A really passionate and engaged client, and as a designer, to have a client, you can have hands-off clients and hands-on clients. This is a really hands-on client who really, was involved in every stage of the process. Like, we sent them quite a lengthy brief with various questions to be filled out, and all the questions came back, filled out, really on board from the very beginning. And I just knew from the onset that it was going to be a successful outcome because the way the client was responding to the perhaps more laborious tasks, such as having to fill out a brief form. So it needed a complete rebrand. It's a clean slate essentially. Perhaps a rejigging of the name, and the product tub itself was going to stay the same, but essentially a complete rebrand. So the first area to be resolved, may not be obvious, but it is of course the naming. You need to nail the naming before you can move on, because the brand is going to be built around the name. So when we're working with naming with a client, you get a lot of different opinions. Some of it's quite subjective, so it's always good to have something to anchor it. So what we do is we have an assessment criteria, and I encourage anyone going through a naming process to make a note of these criteria points, because it just brings it back when you're getting lots of different opinions and you need to weigh it up against something. So you can see there, pronunciation is very important, and Katu Honey, it didn't work in that sense. So you can see we abbreviated that to Katu Honey, which is the front runner. Sound symbolism, how it rolls off the tongue, does it sound like the product? Emotional bonding power, are people going to connect with it as a name? Memorability, very important. Simply Honey was one of the names that came up, but of course Marks and Spencer's, the Simply range, it's just too generic, and potentially, is going to cause conflict of interest as well. And then the negative and positive associations. So, for example, Muzinga Honey, which we thought was great sign symbolism, sounds like the product. It's actually a racial slur in Lugandan. So Muzingo is very close to that. So you have to think about, in the native tongue, what dissimilar sounds are they going to have negative or positive associations? So there was 25 names put into the mix. 9 were shortlisted. We really liked A Good Start Honey or My Little Hive. We thought they were lovely, but they were too juvenile. They could have been interpreted as perhaps a children's product. So maybe one to put in the pocket for another day. So the consumer profile. This is an extremely important stage of the design process, is trying to get yourself into the feet of a consumer who's going to be picking up your product. So we know that the consumer is socially conscious. We have read that this age bracket is going to be 40 or below, because this is the age group that has grown up with fair trade. They know about fair trade, they're educated. A recent Nielsen study has also shown that people are willing to pay a little bit more if they perceive that a brand is going to give back to society. And they will be aware of environmental and social issues. And I think Fergal Quinn, better than anybody, understood the psychology of the consumer. He said, when somebody goes into a supermarket in Super Quinn, they're not buying a product because they like the product, they're buying the product because they are like the product. So I'm a Super Quinny type of person, or in this case, I'm a Katu Honey kind of person. So I'm the kind of person who wants to have Katu Honey on myself, and that says something about me. So this is the fun bit, the inspiration. Designers will work in various ways, but you'll see common themes today, and one of those, I suppose, is how we collate our information. It's almost like the detective stage, you're just trying to gather as much information and really understand the brand and also what's out there in the marketplace. So you've heard the word benchmark today, and I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail on that term. So benchmarking is the process of studying a particular function or attribute of a competitor for the purpose of making their level of excellence your minimum level of excellence. So you're setting a standard that you want to achieve, and you're leaving your office and you're going out and you're walking the supermarket aisles. And this is just an overview of what I would have done, going into some of the more premium supermarkets and more mainstays as well. And really what you're looking for here is new technologies on packaging, pack finishing, formats, and how can make the Katu product really stand out on shelf against the competitor set. As part of that, I would look into broader influences as well. So, online I looked up the Victoria and Albert patterns, which, for example, have some really nice graphic representations of nature, and that's feeding into the design process as well. I particularly liked the coat of arms for South Africa, as it had a sort of a seal or a stamped feel about it, and there's nice symmetry and it had an ethnic feel. So that was particularly influential for me, and you'll see that later on in the design. Just a note as well on typography. So when a designer is looking to create typography for a pack, they'll typically be looking for 2 to 3 fonts. One of those will be a title font, which is the headline. So in this case, Katu Honey. And you're looking for something here that's functional and is going to catch the eye. So it needs to be clean, clear, immediate and recognizable, and it's going to be viewed from a distance as well. So that's very important. The descriptive font then is going to have a little bit more about the ingredients, and that needs to be personal, handwritten, and it should pique the consumer's interest. So it's like if you're going to order from a menu, that's the thing that's going to compel you to order that. So just to take you through some of the typography experiments that I would have gone through, this is the title font here on the left at the top. Now the client had said to me in this case that they wanted something very modern and unfussy. So I went for this font here, which is Flama. And then the descriptive fonts are the three down below. I had originally put this in, ITC Flora, and then reverted to Coquette, which is the one below. But the client actually came back and said, I actually prefer ITC Flora. I think it's clearer, it's not as fussy, can you change back? And we changed back. And that was really constructive criticism on the part of the client, because now that I look at the two, it definitely is the clearer font. So the other things that I would have been looking at this stage is mark making, stamps, different ways to kind of convey the ethnicity of the brand. Water. So we just moved through the concepts quite quickly now, and the thing behind the concept is you're not trying to convey everything. You can't convey everything on pack. So what you're trying to convey is the most important thing, or one key visual metaphor that can sum up the brand. So this one here is quality, and you can see the supporting imagery. So a very textured pack with the seal on top to cover the lid to make it feel more handcrafted. Our second theme then is provenance. So one thing that stood out to me from our earlier conversations with the client was, we want sense of adventure in the pack. It's a very rich and cultural country, so to try and draw from that. This little label as well is a slightly different format, so it would open up and read like a little book. So a note to myself, I've already done that. So the little book, opens up and it draws on a kind of a pattern, and patterns like this can be very useful in design because, you can use them throughout your branding as a common thread in different formats. Our third theme then is social inclusion. So this is the idea of making that emotional bond, so that the mother bee and the little bee, and it's this idea of protection and also posterity. And the fourth theme then is empowering women. So this is the one that I felt had the most potential, and this is the one that the client went for as well. They absolutely loved it. Now, I've shown you here what it was like before you went through any modifications, but it did change a little bit for the actual final pack. So the idea is that the women have the hives in their back garden, so they're intimately involved with their product. And the beehive, obviously hair idea, and just tying that into one unique symbol, as I suppose, as I said earlier, I was influenced by the coat of arms, so that for me was my kind of translation of that. So this is the evolution of the idea, just showing you how it developed from the earlier sketches through to the final result. So as part of the process, Value Added Africa conducted a survey, and Kristina's going to talk you through that now.
Just a show of hands, have any of you all ever conducted a survey through SurveyMonkey, or? Oh, you have. Okay. So I find it a really useful way of gathering, of doing market research and gathering important information. So, it's very cheap. The first level is free, and then you pay for higher levels. Anyway, so we sent a survey out to VAA's mailing list of 2,000. The survey, SurveyMonkey can be great, but you have to make sure that the survey is, that you plan the survey correctly. Like for instance, it must be as concise as possible so people actually do it and really get the information you're looking for. So we sent it out to 2,000. We had 270 respondents. So in the survey, I mapped out the data points, the elements that we were trying to gain from the survey. For instance, I asked people, do you think the packaging design represents a quality product for connoisseurs, a natural product, a product from Africa, a tasty product, an ethically made product, and a handcrafted product? As well, I asked if you saw this in a shop, would you be likely to purchase it? I asked what price range you'd pay for each concept, as well as asking people to rank the concepts. So the winning concept scored very high on each of these elements. I also asked for open-ended feedback on what they liked and disliked about each concept, and this was incredibly constructive for moving the design process forward with amendments and all. These are some nice positive comments, and we did actually get a lot of positive comments. Looks authentic and African, gives me the feeling of buying a high-end product, would like to have it on my kitchen shelf. So these are all comments about the chosen design. The design is tasteful, it's important if you're trying to convey a good tasting product. But actually, the more negative comments or constructive criticism, a better way of calling it, were actually the most helpful. For instance, somebody mentioned that the earrings on the design, on the Empowering Women design, looked like beeswax coming from the hive. So we couldn't really look at it the same way again, so we took the earrings off, and I think it looks better now. So yeah, definitely recommend doing the survey for you all. And pass it back to Laura.
So just a brief note on artworking. So at this stage the design would have been approved by the client. There's some final changes. You'll probably notice that the texture, for example, has changed in the backpack. Some tightening up of the typography, tweaking of the illustration, finalising of the copy, which we did in conjunction with a copywriter. And then I would have created the keyline, which is essentially the pack shape, and mocked that up myself onto the packs to make sure it had a really snug fit and it was going to be okay in production. Then range extension, so there was a 350 and a 500 gram tub, and both dark and light flavour variants, and you can see there, so there's the light amber and the dark amber, and the colour coding to differentiate each product. And on your right, that's actually the tamper-proof seal, so the strip comes down over the jar and then it tears when you open it. And the emission statement as well there is on the lid. So this has gone to production now. It's in Kampala, and this is just a visualization of the final product. So the jar shape there is slightly different to the actual rollout. So they went for a plastic jar. We're hoping that they will change to glass jar, particularly at a price point of €5 a jar. I think it would just raise the brand. And roll out of the logo onto the website and also onto the tote bags. And this ties in with their social enterprise scheme because they're asking deaf youths to make the bags. So we'll just quickly go through the growth now and the future for Katu Honey.
Okay, this will be very brief. Katu Honey was launched on April 14th in the UK at an event entitled Social Entrepreneurship, a Bold New Approach to Tackling Poverty. So at the event were NGO leaders and business leaders as well. The honey sold out for £5 a jar, and the event was actually wonderful for networking and gaining potential funders. And this is Susan, the CEO of Katu Honey, who we worked very closely with. So she should be here. So going forward, they're going to have to think about whether they want to market locally or internationally. Ideally, they'll target local markets first, then regional, and then ultimately go international in a few years. So there are advantages to local marketing and international marketing as well. Local markets, there are lower marketing and transaction costs. The plastic jar will suffice. There's less stringent quality criteria, although it's becoming a bit more stringent in Uganda, and small volumes are more acceptable as well. This is a popular honey in Uganda called Not Tonight Honey. And there's a marketing lead on the bottom there. So international markets is ultimately the dream of a lot of African producers because you can sell at a higher price point, in more developed countries. As well, there's larger market as well, and foreign exchange earnings. So there are opportunities and challenges to marketing locally. Firstly, the main opportunity is the local regional demand. They don't produce enough to meet their demand. And honey is increasingly in demand as incomes are rising and middle classes are growing in Africa. There's a lot of buy local sentiment, much as there is in Ireland. Ugandans want to buy Ugandan. There's a lot of other products, international products on the shelf, but if the price matches, they normally buy the Ugandan product. As well, there's an unexploited market for other bee products, propolis, venom, beeswax, etc. So there are challenges. Like I said, the quality standards are becoming more strict, so certifications becoming more enforced, which is a good thing, but also will be a challenge because of price. There's a lot of cheap foreign brands flooding the shelves, so that's a challenge. And there's also an underdeveloped imports subsector. So there are only a few companies in Uganda that actually produce the packaging material, and there's a 50% import tax of packaging material into Uganda. So you actually have a lot of people smuggling honey out of Uganda and getting packaged there and then sold back. So, and then scale as well. So the local market, there's often a circular issue, a circular challenge with scale. Producers don't produce to scale because they don't have the market, and then markets won't buy from the producers because they can't produce to scale. So this is more of a challenge in the international market, but also is an issue locally. So international markets, there are opportunities and challenges. Opportunities include EU demand. The EU does not produce enough honey to meet its accelerating demand. There's a high-value niche markets in the EU, whereas there wouldn't really be that in Africa. And also Uganda is one of the very few, just a handful of African countries that are allowed to export honey into the EU. And also because they're a least developed country, they get entry tax-free. And there's also more demand for the kind of honey that they produce, that Katu Honey produces, the multifloral and residue-free honey. And with all the issues surrounding colony collapse syndrome and the residue of pesticides in honey, people are looking more and more about for high-quality, organic, and multifloral honey. So challenges include logistics. It's going to be quite expensive to transport the honey to the EU, so they're going to have to take it by car or whatever to Kenya and then ship it from Kenya to the EU. So logistics will be an issue, and because of the cost of transport, they're going to have to sell the product as a premium product. So in order to sell the product as a premium product, they're going to want to have fair trade and organic certifications, which are very expensive and very bureaucratic and actually not conducive to small-scale producers. So household producers, it's just not feasible to get each little plot certified organic because you have to certify the foraging range around the hive, which is the radius of 3 to 4 kilometers, depending on the certification, for each little household plot. So it's just near impossible. They might get there one day, hopefully, because the certifications are helpful. That is a challenge. And scale is very challenging because the costs of exporting to the EU and the effort that goes into it just isn't worth it if you don't have scale. And as well, there is a bias, which we've encountered in value added in Africa, and which we're trying to address. There's a bias against African products, against finished products from Africa. People are used to seeing them on the shelves, so they're skeptical of them. So that's a big challenge that Katu will have to address. So just to summarize, Laura, if you want to come up.
So just a few key points to wrap it all up then. We'd really encourage you to develop a compelling brand story, and point 1 and point 4 there are perhaps related. If you have a really good copywriter on board, they can help you tease that out. People buy into the stories behind the products. So develop a compelling brand story. Openly engage in the design process. I know when you're running your own business, there's so much to be doing with, the logistics and the accountancy and getting it up and running and talking to people. But this is essentially, it's for serious business, but it should be fun. Design should be engaging and fun, and you openly engage in it, and I think you will enjoy it. And we would definitely highly recommend that you test the product with the market prior to going to launch. So be it through a SurveyMonkey or setting up some taste stands in your local store. But gauge the feedback from the consumer, because you can save yourself a lot of money in the production stage if you do it early. And then I think jointly, myself and Kristina would say, we really do feel that hiring a copywriter is money well spent, because they are able to, succinctly say what you were trying to say in 10 words, in 2 words. And space is valuable, unpack.
It depends on the copywriter too. You have to get a good copywriter. So see what they've done before you hire them. Donald Lane from Brand Led Growth is amazing. He works closely with Value Added in Africa, and we've used him. He helped us with the Katu Honey. We've used him on a number of projects. Donald Lane, Brand Led Growth. Also, developing strong working relationships with everyone involved is very, very important. Laura and I have become very close, and Susan, we've become very close with Susan as well. So it's really important to have good relationships, so you can feed back maybe negative things to each other without upsetting. And brief, and more brief. I found the brief is just the most important thing. So make sure it's substantial. And we can even, send you copies of the brief that we use or whatever if you're interested. And marketing with broad brushstrokes is another tip. You don't have to convey every detail, because that often trips people up. They think they're not telling the whole story, or they're missing something. But it's just important to convey the sentiment and just a few central concepts.
So thank you very much for your time and for listening to us today. And we actually have some honey all the way from Kampala. If anyone would like to try some, please feel free.
They're on right.